Hey, middle-aged musician here, and today I just wanted to opine, give my perspective on sort of gear acquisition syndrome, which I clearly have had bouts of, and just sort of what I've learned over the 40-ish years I've been playing, buying equipment, trading equipment. In terms of where you invest, both emotionally and financially, in instruments. And when I say investment, I want to make clear that I'm not necessarily talking about collecting for the sake of instruments going to appreciate in value. Things go up and down in value a little bit. There are things that probably are worthwhile. I do buy instruments. I have been more recently buying instruments that I feel like are going to have a stable price or go up in value, but that's not my motivating factor. So I have 4 points that I want to make. First point is inspiration. The second point is a relationship between price and quality. The third point, to quote Phil McKnight, is know your gear. And the fourth point is make it your own. So just talk briefly about what those things mean. And hopefully this is helpful. I think when I was younger, I would get swayed a lot by other people's opinions, good or bad, sometimes helpful, sometimes not. I've learned to take that with more of a grain of salt and in a larger perspective. Again, playing for 40 years, I've seen a lot of things. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've learned a lot that way. Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to say is get what inspires you. So, these 4 points are very closely related, but inspiration should be your motivating factor, and at least one of the primary motivating factor. When you're first playing, it's a little hard to see what kind of what you connect with, but instruments are, it's a tool and a piece of art, and different tools for different purposes, but also you're going to interact with it differently. They play differently, and that could be at the level of, say, a Telecaster versus a Les Paul, but it's also within that. So a budget line Martin versus a higher line Martin could play very differently. In fact, you would expect they would play very differently. But how you interact with that varies. So even in the same line. So I'll give you a few examples. I have a kind of budget Gibson Les Paul, and I have a higher line Heritage, company Heritage Les Paul, which costs about 3 times what my Gibson Les Paul costs. I like playing both. They're both great guitars, but you'll see me playing the Gibson one far more often. Another example, I always get the left and right kind of turned around. See what I mean? There we go. This copper-colored American Strat, series right below the custom shop. It's a nice Strat, plays great, feels great. Yellow Strat over here. It's a Player Series Strat. I generally am playing the yellow one. I like the way it feels and the way that I interact with it when I play it. I find it inspiring, and I'll find myself playing certain kinds of music on it. And with certain gear, I tend to play certain kinds of music versus different gear, which is part of that whole the way I rationalize having so much gear. to myself, the way I lie to myself, I guess. I don't know. But part of it's true, so you're gonna interact differently with it. You'll find yourself playing a certain way with it. And that's what you really want to go for. I wasn't even in the market for the yellow Strat when I bought it, and I'm actually not really much of a Strat guy, but in the shop where I teach, we get a lot of Strats through there, and most of them are, they're okay. But there were two that came through there that just, got me thinking I really liked it. Start, thinking I really like that guitar. I think I'm gonna buy one of them, and I did, and I really enjoy playing it. So it's the inspiration and the enjoyment, or the motivating factors for that. And to some extent, I said, well, I have to get rid of something if I'm going to bring something else in. But do I enjoy all of my instruments equally? No. Some of it is just to have a variety of tools, and for each tool use case, this is one that I prefer. But there's definitely things I could get rid of, and I will be getting rid of. But yeah, that's the first point. Inspiration. What inspires you to play? What you enjoy playing? What makes you feel creative? What makes you play a different way? That should be your first motivation on the gear. The second one I've already kind of hinted at. It's this relationship between price and quality. When you pay more for something, you are expecting higher quality. And it might be so the cost of materials. So you're expecting, usually better woods, maybe a bone nut, better tuners, better electronics at a given price point. You're also probably, the other thing that affects price is cost of labor, which different markets, maybe you want to support a local artisan or luthier, or an American company, and that might cost more than something that's an import. But also, even within those series, there's the amount of attention that's given. So as you go up the different series of Fender Strats, you're expecting a higher and higher amount of attention given to it to do detail work, or on a machine to do some of that detail work, and that equals more money. Some of that is worthwhile, some of it's not. A $15,000 or $20,000 Martin may or may not play better than a $2,000 Martin, at least for you. But it will have much more intricate inlays, higher grade woods. It's probably had more time in the hands of somebody. Custom shop Fender, it's had more time in the hands of somebody, and somebody who costs more per hour because of their level of experience. So those are things that you're paying for. What does that mean? So maybe a gorgeous guitar is inspirational to you, and that's what you want. I'm not really an advocate for buying things as collector pieces. There are things I have, like my 37 Rickenbacker, I would call kind of a collector piece, but I didn't buy it to make money off of it. I bought it because I wanted one. I think it's inspirational, and there's a historical aspect that speaks to me. But just because something's more expensive doesn't mean it's going to inspire you more, and it may not even mean that it's better. But it goes both ways. So I gave the example of the Les Paul and the Strat up there. I have a number of tellies. I have a made in Mexico telly. It was my first telly I bought, and when I bought that, there were about 40 of them in the shop, and that was the one that played the best. All the same series, but that one hands down played the best, at least to me, and so that's the one that I bought. But I have an American same problem. American Anniversary one there, that Blackguard. I just love that. It plays fantastic. It's more expensive, and it is a great guitar. So spending the extra money can be worthwhile, But they don't think just because, oh, this is a cheap, or it's a cheaper name or something, that I wouldn't put too much stock in that. When I was a kid, I didn't have a lot of money. Like any teenager, didn't have a lot of money, and so I was buying pawn shop guitars and stuff like that. And one of the local store owners was always like, "Yeah, you need to." And I had a little bit of gear acquisition syndrome, so I was buying multiple ones. He's like, instead of having 5 cheaper guitars, I only have one nicer guitar, and there's something to that. But I learned a lot going through that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Working on these guitars and just understanding the differences between instruments. I learned a lot that way, and it was a cheaper education than if I was doing that with Les Pauls and things like that. But at the same time, there's like a little bit of like this public shaming. Like if you show up at a trying out for a band, and you've got a Squire and everybody else is playing custom shop Strats, and you're like, am I going to get shamed? Hopefully not. Hopefully people are listening with their ears and not with their wallets. But there is some of that happens. There's in the music industry, but I wouldn't put much stock in that. I have nice instruments. I have some expensive instruments. Last year, I just bought the bottom line Gretsch hard body, solid body single cut. It's below the Electromatic. I can't remember what the series is right now, but it played decently. I got a good price on it. I did a setup on it. I changed out the electronics, not the pickups. I was going to change out the pickups. Pickups were okay, but $10 of parts from TV Jones for some new pots and caps and switches. The pots in particular made a huge difference on that guitar, and it wound up being a pretty decent guitar. I would put it up against a lot of much more expensive guitars, and I had no qualms about playing that. And I think that sort of attitude has dissipated from kind of a high point of cork sniffing that happened, earlier on. I think you get that a little bit with, people that are into vintage stuff, but, there was a period where after like the White Stripes and Black Keys and all of these other color plus noun bands came out, that, the people got interested in these old Airlines and Harmonies and things like that. So, so that's my second point. First point is, what inspires you. Second point is there's this relationship between price and quality, but don't get hung up on it. Expensive doesn't necessarily mean good. Cheap doesn't necessarily mean bad. The third thing is to know your gear. I might be going out of order from how I did it originally. I don't know, but knowing your gear. So again, I grew up, kind of playing in the '80s, and that was, Eddie Van Halen era of everybody took their guitar apart. We were, did all kinds of things. I did horrible things to some of these guitars. I mean, I had a Ash Strat. It was a off-brand. It was a Lotus Strat, but it was a decent guitar. But it was heavy. It was not like lighter Swamp Ash. Maple neck on it, and I did a bunch of stuff to that guitar. I put in a tremolo, locking tremolo on it. I can't remember everything I did to that guitar. But one of the things that I did is when Yngwie was talking about scallop fretboards, I started seeing guys with scallop fretboards. So I scalloped the whole fretboard, got done with it, hated it. So I wound up, selling it. Having these cheaper guitars, I got to play around with, swapping necks around, swapping pickups around, refinishing them, fixing them. Stuff would break, you have to fix it. So I learned a lot that way, and learned how to do setups, and learned how to, tune the electronics, and how to, fix and make my own cables, and how to fix amplifiers, and you learn, change speakers, and all these things that you learn that if you're just buying, high-end gear, you might not do. And vintage gear, you're probably not going to do, but although there's some maintenance involved. But you're in there getting your hands dirty, and so you really know your instrument well. I have several instruments here. I know, nose to tail, in and out very well, and I would say that's true for most of my instruments. But I can tell you a lot about them. I've adjusted them. I've done setups and things like that. But you should learn how to do things like adjust your truss rod. I don't know how many people I've heard, know that are like afraid to do that. Changing strings should be a basic one, but if you keep having strings break, maybe you have a sharp spot on a saddle and fixing that. And I've had to do that before. Adjusting nuts, changing tuners, adjusting your pickup height, adjusting your saddles, just doing basic setup, fret polishing, things like that. These are all basic things that you should know how to do. There's so many videos out now that there's almost no excuse to not know how to do these things. But start simple. You should know how to change your strings, which on a lot of guitars is real simple. But if you're playing a classical guitar or one with nylon strings where you have to tie them, it's a little more complex. I put nyla guts on my banjos, and you tie those a little bit differently than you do on my classical guitar. Like on an ukulele. But these are all things to learn. Adjusting neck, getting your neck relief and all that. When I was a kid, I played around a lot trying to find the right string gauge for me, and then kind of the right string gauge for each guitar, and you wind up having to make adjustments when you do that. So you can pay a tech to do this. They're very happy to take your $100 a pop or whatever, but something learn how to do. So really knowing your gear and your amps, kind of knowing the intricacies, like simple stuff like what kind of speaker is it, how many ohms is it, how many, what are the tubes in it. That's basic stuff you should know if you have tubes, or if or if it's a tube amp or not. It sounds crazy, but I think there are probably people that don't know with their amps. And your pedals and how to maintain them, and if they take batteries, and how to when things get loose going through, and how to tighten up pots and jacks and things like that. There's a guy, if you don't watch his channel, Psionic Audio, he repairs amps and that, and they're great resources to learn about things. And he does a number of them where he talks about he shows basic maintenance, how to these are the things you should do on your Fender amp or your Vox amp. These are the kind of things he's always tightening up jacks and pots and things like that rattle loose. So yeah, know your gear, to again quote Mr. McKnight. And the fourth thing is kind of making it your own. You should, don't feel afraid to change things if there's something you want. So let's say you buy a cheaper guitar, you buy a Squier Strat, and you're playing for a while. You're like, I play this other guitar, and I like the way it sounds better. So maybe you want to change the pickups. I wouldn't feel, you should feel free to do that. Now, if you're, talking about like a historic, 59 Les Paul that was owned by, somebody famous or something, I would say don't do that. Like, I don't think Kirk Hammett is doing this with Greenie, Peter Green's old Les Paul. But the kind of stuff, the kind of gear I'm talking about, feel free, changing speakers and amps. An easy way to do that, if you have an external speaker jack, try out some different speakers before you swap them. Or even leave your speaker and just get an external speaker cabinet. There are people that will, change tubes to something that's rated a little bit differently. Not the same tube, but like, a 12AX7 maybe that has a little different rating on it. Although people will do sometimes tubes in the same series. So like preamp tubes, you're pretty safe to change from like a 12AX7 to a 12AU7 or 12AY, AT7. Different. There's just have different gain levels. They're basically the same tube. They just have different gain levels. But yeah, feel free to make it your own. Changing pickups or electronics, or refinishing things if you want. It's your gear, right? So all these things tied together. And so, knowing your gear allows you to kind of make it your own. Those two things are very tightly coupled. And price and quality, play into this. Something that's really expensive, you might not feel the same way about modifying it. But, and if you're paying for quality, you're probably a little less prone. But, things like changing out pickups, electronics, and things like that. You can definitely make it your own. Personalize it to your tastes. What you buy in the store is probably your starting point, and you want to always be something that inspires you. And it might be something's getting stale after a while, and maybe you pick up a different instrument until that one is inspiring again. I do that a lot with amps, but maybe you change it. Which that poor black Telecaster back there that I bought new in like 2006, I think. I've done all kinds of stuff to it. It's had many lives, many configurations, and it's probably going to go through another another life here before too long. I haven't really been playing it much. I've been playing a couple other guitars. I used to play that one almost exclusively, and it has had very little attention. I might get back to it, but I'm probably going to take it apart, do some things to it, make some changes, and then I'll probably be playing it again. So anyway, just recapping, get what inspires you. Price and quality do have a correlation, but don't get hung up on it. Know your gear intimately, and feel free to make it your own. So those are my 4 points from 4 decades of experience, and my semi-sage wisdom or not. Definitely my opinions. So if this is helpful for you, let me know. I will ramble on at you again later. Thanks for watching. Bye.